A Broadway performer, singing, acting, dancing. When we were young, it was there were the dancers, there were the singers, and there were the actors, and now it's all one. I mean, you see, I think starting with Carol Lawrence and Larry Kurt in West Side Story, you had a person who could act, sing, and dance.
Well, it's interesting. It was Edie Adams that said, and I think very well, that that was the beginning of the end of an era when everyone had to do everything. She said because you had the very best singers, the very best dancers, and instead you ended up with people that could do everything pretty well, but nothing incredibly.
Yeah, except when you found somebody who can do everything very well, you have a real major star. When you found a Julie Andrews or a Carol Burnett.
Yeah, you do. It's really okay though.
Okay. All right.
Because it's natural.
Oh yes.
Almost. One little bit to the left. You're an expert at that.
The whole thing, or just the left?
Did you get to sing in any Broadway shows? Even though you came...
when I came then? Yes, I saw the last of like a certain...
Not sing in any of them.
Oh, did I sing in any of them?
Yeah.
No, I did one. It was a musical version that Michael Valenti wrote of Snow White, and I was Prince
Oh, I
Charming.
remember.
And it ran about 10 days.
Oh, that's enough.
It was a great job because I just came on stage at the end of the second act, sang one big baritone solo, woke up Snow White with a kiss.
Well, that's perfect.
And then led the entire cast in a rousing finale.
Oh, so you were the Prince. You were Prince Charming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
and I sat in my dressing room and read the New York Times every day.
Yeah, that's
all
great.
the elves hated me, the dwarves, you know? All these short people who had to run around and double as tree stumps. Just check this light and then we'll be good to go. You know, I usually don't mention things about change one more thing. That's a little gold for you, the backlight. I usually don't mention things about my past life, really, but I do have to tell you that once, many years ago, when I was singing in a small club, you and your wife came.
Oh, really? Where was it?
Because she was looking for a place to sing in New York, and someone had recommended the club and evidently told you that I was a good act to see. It was called Judy's.
Oh, yes. Did we see you at Judy's? We must have.
Yes, you did, and you were very nice. You came up afterwards
Oh,
and said...
yeah, she did sing at Judy's ultimately.
I felt very good
Before
about
it was Judy's, it was another thing. It was a woman's name, another woman.
Jan Wallman.
Yeah, she sang when it was Jan Wallman's earlier, and they said they turned it into Judy's. Yes.
You said that, which we'll talk a little bit about today, too.
If I told you were good, I wasn't bullshitting. I don't bullshit people.
You were very generous.
I don't
you
go...
told me something I never forgot.
What's that?
I sang a song called Rhode Island.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember? And you
That's
said
true.
every night Jack Haley sang that song and tried to get a joke on New Jersey gives us glue, and he couldn't get it. And he goes, but you got it. You know why? And I said, why? And he said, because you're smart enough to do nothing, to leave it alone, and let it work. He goes, that was very smart.
Yeah.
And I never forgot that.
Well, the main thing about Rhode Island is I was so happy that he never got sick because I understudied him. I had a partner in the musical, but I understudied him, and I was so happy not to have to sing because I'm not a singer, and I do sing, but I'm always worried about going off key.
You're always happier if you don't have to, right?
Pencils come from Pennsylvania, vests from West Virginia, and tens from Tennessee. The wheat fields of the... I forgot.
Exactly. Yeah. The sweet fields of
Nebraska.
Kansas gives bonanzas or something.
Yeah.
It was a great song. D.C. Schwartz.
Tens come from Tennessee, I remember that.
I had more fun singing that song.
Good song. Yeah, you picked one that nobody ever sang. That's what's interesting.
Well, probably not so wisely. I had a lot of those.
Yeah. No, that's good. You just keep yourself original that way.
Well, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor, if you don't mind, and direct your answers to me.
I will. That's easier.
Great. And also, if you don't mind...
Repeat the question?
Yeah, almost as if you originated it.
Okay.
I have a feeling you'd be very comfortable with this format.
Yes.
Because you won't ever hear my voice. Do you remember the first time that you saw Times Square?
The first time I what?
Saw Times Square?
The first time I saw Times Square, I think I was 15 years old. It's the first time I went downtown from the Bronx. My friends, Mutty, Schlermy, Duvid, and one more, I forget, Victor. We saved our money to go to not a neighborhood movie, the downtown movie, to see my favorite actor, Frederick March, at the Astor Movie Theater in Anthony Adverse. And it was, a matter of fact, it was my first, I remember, I was sort of funny at the time, and I remember doing the scene where the old father says, "You're a man, you're a son of sorrow and adversity." Adversity. Yes, I know. We will call you Anthony Adverse. I remember making a joke, Anthony Adverse, and I made a joke of that. But that's my first time I went downtown.
Wow, you were living in the Bronx.
I was living in the Bronx. It was 50 cents to see the movie. In our neighborhood, we got in for $1.25, but that was the first run at the Astor. 50 cents was a lot of money. In born in 22, it had to be 36, 37.
Was it an event to go to the center of Times Square? Did you see those lights? Or did you take them for granted?
No, we didn't take the lights for granted because we hadn't been there. However, New York is, every part of New York is crowded. So when you went downtown for the first time, the buildings were taller, but the amount of people were probably more people than were in the Bronx. But we were used to crowds, and we got used to it very fast. Going to the automat for the first time was the thrill. You give somebody a quarter and they throw back 5 nickels, and you put them in slots and get things like chocolate pudding pie, which comes once a year. It used to come during one season. And but thrilling times.
Do you remember seeing a show after the films? Do you remember seeing your first Broadway show in a theater?
My first Broadway show, thanks to the Works Progress Administration, the WPA, there was a version, there was an original, I don't know, but it wasn't a musical, 1/3 of a Nation. I can't remember if there was music in it or not. There was, well, 1/3 of a Nation is ill-housed, ill-fed, coming from one of Roosevelt's speeches, and we were taken downtown by our high school, and I went into a theater, sat in the second balcony or the third balcony. I think there were 3 balconies in this theater. There was, because I played in that theater years later, the Daly Theater in New York, torn down on 63rd Street off Broadway, and I saw this unbelievable thing happening. People on stage making you care. And then in the second or third act, there was a fire in a tenement, and they did it with, with silk and lights, and I said, my God, it's brilliant, it's wonderful. But I must say, before seeing that, I saw the Mikado. Again, the WPA came up to the high school. Professional actors who couldn't get work, they toured with the Mikado to the different high schools, and that was the most thrilling moment of my life, when I heard a chorus of young voices on stage in beautiful harmony, singing all these great Gilbert and Sullivan songs. I was smitten. Those are my first 2 experiences watching anything in the theater, and I can't discount the fact that my parents once took me down to the Lower East Side to one of the Yiddish theaters, and I saw Molly Pecan singing, and that was a thrill. And years later, when she did Milk and Honey, I met her here in California, went backstage and reminded her that I had known her all my life, because we had her records. And I had a hot dog. She sang a song called Hot Dogs. Hot dogs, we got a hot dogs, H-O-T-D-O-G. And she used to throw rubber hot dogs into the audience, and we caught one. I had that hot dog for years. So those were my introductions to theater.
Oh, that's pretty great.
And there's one other one. Again, before I came downtown, again, the Federal Theater Project had touring companies that were on caravans. They went to all the parks in the city, in 5 boroughs. They had a truck. The truck opened up, stage, wings came out of this truck, proscenium, lights came out of the truck, and they found the place usually with a knoll in the parks where there were a natural coliseum. And when I was 12, 13, 14, I saw a play a week for 2 or 3 summers. I remember Baby Maybe Mine, Family Upstairs. I remember seeing them and being so impressed with, and they had microphones in those days in the footlights. I couldn't believe that you could hear them way in the back. And that was my first look at professional theater, because those were all professional actors who were out of work because of the Depression. It was during 35, 6, yeah, when I was 13, I was, yeah, 35, 4, 5, 6, 7.
You know, that's fascinating when you say that, because a lot of people, I'm just going to adjust this while I mention this, a lot of people talk about, today one of the biggest problems with Broadway is that they skipped a generation, or they skipped a couple generations or something. They didn't bring in the kids to see the theater. But when I think of the WPA, which has had such a tremendous effect on the theater anyway, I mean, you know, from Orson Welles to Blitzstein to just, you know, to art to everything. That's fascinating that, you know, people of your generation who changed the entertainment world were being trained every week by seeing theater with, if you didn't have a dime in your pocket, you saw theater. Today, if you don't have a dime in your pocket, you don't see theater ever.
You know, seeing theater in those days cost nothing. As I mentioned, it was a free theater. The only thing that cost money was the pumpkin seeds and the sunflower seeds that was sold by vendors who would buy a bag of sunflower seeds for maybe 20 cents and sell you a jigger of sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds, and you would sit and watch. You were allowed to eat in that theater. Theaters, you're not allowed to take anything now, but it was more like a movie house. And it was a penny. It cost a penny for a jigger of pumpkin seeds and poly seeds. That's a memory nobody probably has ever heard of.
You might start something.
No.
The comeback of the pumpkin
Yeah,
seeds.
that would be lovely to go to the Broadway theater and have people cracking pumpkin seeds. Their cell phones are bad enough.
Exactly. Do you think it affected you seeing those shows that early?
I'm sure my love for the theater started in those three events, seeing the Mikado in Bronx at the Evander Childs High School, seeing Molly Pecan, actually. I love that. Vaudeville stage is wonderful because it's bright and so well lit. It was so exciting to come from a dark world outside and all of a sudden see these bright colored lights hitting smiling faces who sang at you. And the theater in the park, I said, ooh, I didn't say then to my friends I'd like to do that, but I was the cut-up among my friends, and they knew that I probably could do that if I said it, but I never did say it.
But you, at some level, I bet, were knowing. Michael, could you adjust this microphone just a little bit there? Only because when you cross your arms, I don't want it to be uncomfortable for you.
Well,
What do you want?
I think you did it for us
Yeah?
already. It's fine. Do you think it influenced your later work? Those early shows?
You know, who knows what influences your your work. I don't know if that, I don't know what made me want to be an actor or on the stage. I think the idea of being a movie actor was out of the question, and that's what we really were fed as kids. Movies in our neighborhood for a dime. My father was a big movie goer and took us to the movies every weekend. And sometimes I'd go, when I got old enough, I went alone in the afternoon, you know, and paid a dime. And that's what I love doing that. I'd come out of a movie house and I could do Claude Rains, I could do Ronald Coleman, I could perform for my friends. And I knew I loved that, but there was no chance that I'd ever get to them. It's another world, another 3,000 miles away. However, stage was very important in New York. Whether we read about it, we heard about it, and we saw it. And so that's the natural thing to be a stage actor. And when I was old enough and I was out of high school, and I never acted in high school. Is this you want all this shit?
Well, it's getting us somewhere.
Yeah, okay.
But it's fascinating.
Yeah, you want to get to Broadway, don't you? But this is more interesting than Broadway.
But it's interesting, the link that got you to Broadway.
Yes. Well, when I graduated high school, I had never acted except twice in my life. Once, when I was in the 3rd grade, Mrs. Eisenstadt put me in a play called Six Who Pass While the Lentils Boil, and I was hooked. I played the headsman, and my mother, who sat next to the principal, said, "He's the best one," because I was the loudest. I was a headsman. I was talking loudly, and then not again until that's the 3rd grade, and then not again until I was out of high school. And I was working as a machinist helper. Again, here comes the Federal Works Progress, the WPA in again. And by the way, as we are talking now, this has nothing to do, you don't have to put it on the air, but they're trying to kill the NEA, the PBS, and National Public Radio right now. And those three things are so important to the culture of this country. During the Depression era, if it wasn't for the government helping out, we've never had these wonderful chances to see and become part of the theater. And I was about to make a point about, what it is, see it.
You only acted twice before you got out of.
Oh yes, yeah, and I became an actor because my brother had read an ad in the New York Daily News that says free acting lessons for by the WPA at 100 Center Street. Apply. And my brother said to me, "Hey, you ought to go down there." I was working as a machinist helper for $8 a week. I went down there and I was accepted because they'll accept anybody, and that's what started my career. We were being trained for the stage. A little old woman, Mrs. Whitmore, who taught us how to speak with Shakespearean. I could always do that, by the way. I had a good ear for Shakespeare, but I never showed anybody. When we were asked once in class to read something from Shakespeare, but we were asked to learn things, I never volunteered because I thought they'd make fun of me because I could do it, and they were all doing it badly, and I thought they'd say, "Oh, he's a ham," or something. I was shy about that. But Mrs. Whitmore gave us the opportunity to speak Shakespeare. We had to. And to this day, I remember the first thing she said. She said, "You know, in dramatic classes, they're always giving soliloquies, men's soliloquies, you know, from Hamlet. Let's do Queen Gertrude. Let's all learn Queen Gertrude's soliloquy." And there I was doing Ophelia, you know, when Ophelia drowns. When subtle, yeah, now I'm stuck. I got to remember this. There. I'll get it. We'll come back to it. But until this moment, I used to be able to do that whole.
Well, you're
see
on
that?
the spot now.
It's it's a senior moment. That's what it is. There is a willow grows aslant a brook that shows its whole leaves in the glassy stream. There with fantastic garlands did she come of crowflowers, nettles, daisies, and long purples, which liberal shepherds give a grosser name, but our cold maids do dead men's fingers call them. Anyway, it goes on. I could do the rest of it, but I don't want to waste your time.
Sure.
Yeah.
I aspire
But this
to
is
see
when I was
moments like that.
17 years old, and I'm probably the only male actor who can do Queen Gertrude's speech to.
You never know
Describe.
what you may need.
Yes.
So you went to the WPA, and that's been 1940.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
What I was saying. So from Mrs. Whitmore's class, the next thing I knew, I was trying out for there was an amateur company, but they called it a non-equity. I don't know what they called it, but it was up in 63rd Street. It was a guy called Paul Gilmore. His wife, his daughter, Paul and Virginia Gilmore, had a theater, a free theater. The Davenport Theater was a free theater downtown. They had it downtown at Cherry Lane for a while. Then they moved up to 63rd Street, off Broadway, a beautiful old theater, a sister theater to the Court Theater with 3 balconies. It was condemned. The 3rd balcony was condemned. They got it for nothing, Depression time. And they gave these plays 6 days a week and free. All you had to do was pay the tax. There was no tax in those days. 22 cents for upstairs, 44 for the middle, 60, or whatever. It was no more than 40 cents for the whole. And that's how they collected. We all worked for nothing. And I worked there for a year. Every night while I'm working as a machinist helper. That's where I applied my craft. I learned how to be on a stage. I was 17 at the time, and I did 3 shows there in about a year. I think I was there for a year. From there, I got to go to a summer theater. So theater was the thing in those days. We didn't think about it. Radio was a thing too, but that was also, how do you get into radio? Theater, I knew how to get into. And so from there, I went to summer theater, and then I knew I was going to be an actor. I went 2 years to summer theater, and I was drafted. Oh, and one year, I went on a Shakespearean tour with a repertory company doing 4 plays in repertory. And As You Like It, I played Orlando, Comedy of Errors, Antipholus of Ephesus, and in Hamlet, I played King Claudius, and 2 small parts in Taming of the Shrew. Tranio and the tailor. It was a well-known double. But that was my stage. I was going to be on the stage, and the stage was it for every young actor. That's where we wanted to go.
And you could get there.
Well, you could get there because I could take a token. I mean, and we didn't have tokens. A nickel would get you downtown. And when I got back from the Shakespearean tour, the Army was calling very soon after that, and I did go. My first, not Broadway show, but professional show was a Schubert revival of The Merry Widow, and I was a second tenor in the chorus. I remember auditioning for the chorus and going out on the road for 3 weeks, $37.50 a week, but I did it not because I wanted to be a chorus singer, but because I wanted to get my equity card. It'd be chorus equity, but it'd be a union card that when I got in the Army, they said, well, maybe they'll put them in special services, which they never did, until 2 years later I got into special services.
Oh, you had a plan.
I wanted to entertain, and when I got into the Army, I realized I'm an actor. You can't ask people to put a play on. You know, how do you put? So I also was funny. So I worked up an act, a stand-up act, and so I worked in every rec hall that I ever, all the camps I'd ever been in. The US, not the USO shows, the canteens that were in Washington. I worked there, and I entertained wherever I was. I mean, I get up in a rec hall, and by the time I got overseas, I was transferred. Somebody asked me to come audition for Maurice Evans, and he had the entertainment section in Hawaii called the Special Service Entertainment section, and I auditioned for him, did an impression of him, and he laughed, and I said, I'm going someplace. The next day I was going to Iwo Jima. I didn't know it, and he traded me out of the company like a ball player, and I got, after 2 years in the Army, I got into special services.
Wow, thank God.
This is nothing about Broadway yet.
No, but but did you go right into Call Me Mister coming out of the service?
That's not exactly, not after service. I now had been, a year and a half I'd been touring in shows, and the last show I did, because I was now a star of review form, the review form, I wrote and performed in musical reviews in the Army. A show called Shape Ahoy, which Hal David, who was the president of ASCAP, wrote the lyrics for. And when I got out, I was really a musical performer. But before I got out, I said, I'd love to do a play again. I was now a star. And Alan Ludden, who was the captain when Major Evans was cashiered out of the service, and Captain Ludden, dear friend, I said, I'd love to do a play, and I did a play, Petticoat Fever. The last thing I did in the Army was a play in Hawaii. And so now I came out of the Army, but I was mainly a performer, a comedy performer. So I got a job. I auditioned for a job in the mountains, and looking through the little window as I was auditioning at MCA, Music Corporation, for this MC job in the mountains, Herman Levin, who had a show on Broadway called Call Me Mister, was looking through the little thing, and he saw this guy doing whatever I was doing. And he came in, and he sat in the back, and he listened a while. Didn't think anything about it. I got the job up in the mountains, and while I was up there, there were open auditions for Call Me Mister, which was a show with people by only members of the armed forces who had been honorably discharged from the armed forces. And so there was an open audition, and and I was ready to come down and audition for it. And I got a telegram up there saying, we're offering you the role that Julie Munchin was the lead comedy role. And of course I jumped at it. So that one thing, I auditioned, I got 2 jobs, and that was the beginning of my career. And then I never was out of work except for 6 months in between 2 shows on Broadway. I was out of work for 6 months, but never out of work again.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you remember someone named Christine Bartels?
The name?
Joan Bartels?
I know Joan Bartels.
Yes, from Call Me Mister.
Yes. She was a singer, wasn't she? Yeah.
She's a big singing teacher in New York.
No kidding. Yes, I remember her. You see, I did Call Me Mister on the road for 1 year with was Betty Keane and Bill Warfield, Bob Fosse, Buddy Hackett. We had a great cast, and we toured for a whole year. And by the end of the year, the New York company was still running, so I went into the New York company for the last 3 months. So that was my first Broadway experience, a Broadway stage, with Jane Keane and the wonderful cast that existed then.
Now, Betty Garrett had gone to Hollywood already, right?
Well, Betty Garrett had gone to Hollywood, I think, in the middle of the run of the first of the New York company. So I never got to know Betty until I got out into California years later.
Isn't that funny? You both got your big break in Call Me Mister.
You want to hear a funny thing? Is that Betty Garrett and I met years later. I knew of her because I loved her. I saw her on a show called A Vie We Sing, and she glowed, this woman. She was like an incandescent bulb. I fell absolutely in love with her, and I thought she was the best thing she did with an actor called Philly Leeds. And years later, when she was in Hollywood, and she was married to Larry Parks, and they were blacklisted, and I was offered, and I was now a television performer, so I was offered a nice chance to act. Excuse me, I wasn't acting. And I'll start that again. I met Betty Garrett in California years later. She was married to Larry Parks. They were doing a tribute to Ethel Barrymore, and so I was invited to come and be a cast of the tribute to Ethel Barrymore, do sketches and things. And Betty Garrett that was her first job that she got. She was tarred with the blacklist because her husband had been called before the committee. And I remember loving her, and the fact that we were working together. It was years after Call Me Mister, a few years, how many years later? I don't know, 10 years later. But she was so wonderful. What was funny about it is that we were doing a tribute to Ethel Barrymore, and I said, the reason I'm here is because Ethel and I have been so close for so many years. I didn't know, I'd never met her, but with the Barrymore name in our heads, that was it. John, Lionel, and Ethel, my father talked about them even.
Wow. So those paths kept crossing. Did you know, when you were doing Call Me Mister, that era, there were shows like Rodgers and Hart, Rodgers and Hammerstein,
Oh, yes.
Oklahoma. Now people look back at that era and say that was the most exciting, productive, creative time in it. Did they say it was the golden age of Broadway?
Well, you know, every age, in retrospect, can become a golden age. And I think we're at the age now where we can look back at the 40s and 50s when Oklahoma hit, and they sent integrated book and lyrics, you know, the story plot, and the lyrics carrying forward the story with that, and Carousel, and that wonderful, the first thing that Lerner and Lowe wrote, Brigadoon, all of it was magic. And then, of course, Finian's Rainbow was social document. The interesting thing is that it probably started with Showboat, come to think of it. It started even before that. They credited Oklahoma with being the first show, but I think Showboat was. Showboat was based on Edna Ferber's book, a very social document about the times, with wonderful songs, and songs did carry the story. So I think we have to rethink that. Look into the archives and find out if I'm right about that. I think.
Oh, well, I think it definitely happened. It was factually before Finian's Rainbow, and you're right. It was very brave.
But those shows constitute the golden era, and right up to My Fair Lady, and past that, a few shows past that. But then when Irving Berlin's heart broke because he could no longer write the shows that, you know, when the new kind of music came, when rock came in, you know, with Jesus Christ Superstar and all of the those English imports, you know, there was a different kind of show. But I think 20, 40, 50 years from now, they're going to look back and say those were the golden years when the Lion King came in with the new inventions. The golden, but this is interesting. The really golden things that ever happened in any era re-happened. There was a version of Showboat a couple of years ago. There was a version of Carousel a few years ago. And they will keep coming back if they're valid, Even the shows of early Rodgers and Hart. I was trying to think of the one, I can't think of the name now. A couple of years ago I saw it.
Babes in Arms?
No. Oh God! It was Susan Stronham's one of her first jobs as a
Crazy for You.
Crazy for You. Crazy for You was brought back to life in a new form. It also was historically interesting to see the kind of shows that existed then, but overlaid with today's creativity and brilliance. So the golden age continues to go. I mean, you can take something from a dark age and make it a golden age by putting a glitter on it.
Did you know? Did you look around when you were coming out of the theater and, you know, in the shows you were doing then and say, you know, I'm pretty lucky. This is probably the most important time in the history of this century, and here I am in the middle of it?
No, I don't think you ever think that I don't think you ever are aware that you're in the middle of anything that's going to be called a golden age. What you are aware of is excellence, and that's when you walked out of a theater after seeing My Fair Lady. I was floating out of that theater after seeing Don Juan in Hell with those four great actors, Cedric Hardwicke, Agnes Moorehead, I'm going to forget somebody, Tyrone Power, and who's the? No, he did another version. Anyway, that evening and the evening Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, never forgot those. Those are, but that would be golden in any. I mean, Strindberg and Chekhov and all those guys, they're brought back. Nora still exists, and you know, Doll's House still exists, and that performance on Broadway about 3 or 4 years ago with the lovely English actress Judith, what's her name?
Janet McTeer.
That lovely actress Janet McTeer. The golden era has been with us for a long time. And it's been in every era. There's gold in every era. There's gold in them there eras.
Now, you said something very interesting about how it broke Irving Berlin's heart. And that's something that's always fascinated me. And you're at the age now where you're still really productive and you're breaking rules. But there seems to be like a creative ceiling that's either imposed or self-imposed, like Jerry Herman was shut down with Mac and Mabel, and they said, you know, no one cares about the kind of music you're writing. But then, 10 years later, he wrote La Cage aux Folles and won the Tony and broke the rules. And now he's in his 70s and writing a new musical. But Irving Berlin, I hear, wrote till the day he died.
Yes.
But why was his music not as powerful? Was it not relevant? Was there stuff as good as Annie Get Your Gun that didn't get produced?
You know, in every era, there is new music that happens, and nothing can stop the new music from coming, because when the first diatonic scale was invented, then the variations of it became interesting, because we know this though. That's how long can you sing that? But the first time prehistoric man found those 8 notes, and then the variations became more interesting than the 8 notes. So what happens to everybody is that the music of your day is the music that you will live with the rest of your life. I heard there was a wonderful program on yesterday. Ted Koppel on Nightline was doing the hip hop. He said, I don't know about hip hop. I don't understand it. I don't hear it. He says, my ears stopped with jazz. He said, I love jazz. I still love jazz. So with the things that were put in your ear as a kid, my father, what was put in his ear was Franz Lehar, was all the great composers, Beethoven, Bach, and all the operas. And when he heard Bing Crosby, he said, what is that? What is that? He's just not even, no voice, you know. At least he understood Jolson, because Jolson had a big voice. It wasn't an opera voice, but it was, you know, a big voice. But in every era, the people born in that era, and the music that is played in that era, that's what sticks to them. It's a rare individual, the rare genius, who can continue to grow and say, oh, I can use hip-hop and I can do this, and there are crossovers. My wife is one of them. When she heard the Beatles for the first time, she thought they were wonderful, and everybody's saying, who are these kids, you know? But she has an ear. So people who have good ears appreciate the good new things that are happening and criticize the things that are just bad. But there is good things happening all the time, and it's all based on those 8 notes that were invented.
But an Irving Berlin, by all ways and means, should be able to write for the people when he was 65 years old, because the theater audiences are older. Weren't there people that were 65 to go see Kisses from My President or whatever his last
Call Me
was?
Madam, yeah, and then Miss Liberty, did he want to call Miss Liberty?
Yeah.
He did, yeah.
But was it because the work wasn't as good? I mean, I wonder, like Sondheim is facing that.
I think every creative artist, especially in a popular field, composers even, serious composers, I mean, I'm talking about composers who do symphonies, and things do change, and you can't keep changing. Your head gets locked into things. and Irving Berlin, I'm sure, could not come up with something that the audience wanted to buy. The audience changes because there's younger people. However, if you do a revival of a Berlin thing today, you'll go to the theater and mainly it's gray-haired people. There will be other people discovering it for the first time and thinking it's good, but they will discover it because there's a good performer up there. They'll say, well, they love that performer. But basically, it's only interesting historically. It is still entertaining, but and if you don't believe times change, and if you think you can keep changing with the times, you're going to be sadly, you'll find out you're sadly mistaken. You can't. You can accept what's happening in the times, and then that makes you more au courant than if you say, but what is that crap? What is that crap? Look at it carefully and see what that crap is, and maybe there's something that... Remember the first time Elvis Presley came out, I said, I don't want to hear that, and I went to see him in a movie called Stone for Danny Fisher was made into King Creole. And I said, oh, that's what they're talking about. He's very good.
Good for you, but what you say is it takes a concerted effort to remain
yes
with what's happening as you get older.
I think the best thing that can happen, the best thing one can have is, no, I've got to find the right word. What the best thing you can, I think the best thing a person can have is tolerance for what's happening. More than tolerance, acceptance, even if you don't understand it. Don't say it's no good, just say, I don't understand it, rather than, what is that? That's what happened with people who listen to modern music. This is a wonderful analogy that a friend of mine, Leon Kirchner, the head professor of music in Harvard for 35 years, he once said, and this is worthwhile, he said, if you went to a land and they were speaking Chinese and you didn't know that there was a language called Chinese, you only knew there was your language, and you heard Chinese, you would say, what are those people talking about? What are they saying? That's crazy. That's craziness. He said, if you listen to it long enough and you hear ma, oh, ma means candy or tang, whatever it is, ni hao ma, that means how are you, you get to understand it. It's the same thing with music changes. Now, the great composers have heard Beethoven, Bach, and Schubert, and they love them, the great new modern composers, but that's been done. You don't want to do it again, so they do something else. Schoenberg found it, Stravinsky found it, and the people will say, what kind of music is that? They threw rocks at Stravinsky when the Sacre du Printemps opened in Paris. But if you keep listening to it long enough, and whatever it is, even hip-hop, I'm going to watch the rest of those hip-hop shows the next 3 days they're going to be on, you'll say, oh. So the thing to do is to be tolerant about things that you don't understand. You can't go around saying, what is that? That's junk. If enough people are listening to it, find out why they're listening to it. Find out why the modern music is being listened to by a lot of people, and other people will never go into a concert if they know there's going to be only a modern music, if they're not going to hear Stravinsky or, Tchaikovsky or, Beethoven.
That's a fascinating point, and that's...
This is a way away from your Broadway
we got
thing.
off, but it's good for the end of the pieces. We talk about where Broadway's going, so
yeah.
It is relevant. In those days, in the 40s, when you were working on Broadway, what was the social scene like? Did you go out afterwards? Did you celebrate? And you weren't didn't have a wife and kids at home already, did you? Where you ran?
Well, I really can't tell you what the social scene on Broadway was from 1947 to 1950. I was on Broadway. I did 3 shows. One was Call Me Mister, where I replaced Jack Carter, replaced Julie Munch, and I replaced him. And I worked there for 3 months, and then I think that's when I didn't get a job for 6 months, and my next job, of course I was waiting for the good job, and now I'm a star of a show, and I'm auditioning for Music Man. How about that? Things like that. I can sing, but I don't have the rhythm that you need for Music Man. But, and the next thing I know, I got Inside USA with B. Lilly and Jack Haley. I was the 3rd banana on that, and also understudied Jack Haley. However, when I did Call Me Mister, and I was in Boston, and I went all over the country, we had a child born called Rob Reiner. He was called Robbie at the time. He traveled with us when he was 6 weeks old until he was 9, 10 months when we came back. And now I was living in the Bronx, and it was a wonderful job for a young father because you can be with your kid and your wife all day. It's curtain time at 8 o'clock, you leave the house at 7, and you come home at 11:30, 12. And so that was my life in 3 Broadway shows, Inside USA. I had no place, I had no fun going anyplace. I had fun with my Bronx friends, and I had a few friends in the theater, but I didn't hang around Broadway. I lived in the Bronx. And then my 3rd show, this is interesting, the power of Broadway. In 1949, I think it was, 1948, I was in Inside USA, and I was offered to do a little job in a television show at ABC. It was going to pay me $80 a week. I was getting, by the way, salaries were altogether different on the road. You'll be interested in salaries, I'm sure. On the road and Call Me Mister, I got $200 to start, and they said if you stay with the show for 2 weeks and we don't fire you, we'll give you $250. And I was told, never ask for a raise, and don't show me reviews, Mr. Levin said, because you're supposed to get good reviews. So never ask for a raise. And I didn't ask for a raise until I got to Chicago, and I had a real crazy company of people who were really nuts, and they were doing crazy things with each other and fighting, and they'd come in my dressing room and say, can I dress with you? I can't stand them up there. So I sent Herman Levin, I said, not because of the great reviews that I did get from Claudia Cassidy, who said she didn't like the show in New York and don't come to Chicago. So she said, this man saved the show. I didn't send him that review. It was a few weeks later, I said, Mr. Levin, I think, and not for the reviews or for what I'm doing, but for psychiatric work I'm doing on the show. I think I ought to, so he gave me another $35 a week for my psychiatric work, because I was a steady person. I was a married man with a kid. So my Broadway scene was always with a married man with a kid. And after Inside USA, I got a job in a thing called, always looking for the Broadway job. I did 2 summer theater things, or 1 summer theater thing called Pretty Penny. And I was on television at the time. I got that first job for $80 a week, and then I got another job with a thing called the CBS Follies or something, I can't remember, 54th Street Review. And I was the head comedian, leading comedian on that. I got $125 a week. And Herman and Harold Rome, who had written Call Me Mister, I loved his work. He had written Fanny. I just loved him. He came up with an idea for a review. And Jerry Chodoroff, who wrote Wonderful Town with his brother, and with Jerry Chodoroff, and who was it? Joe Fields. Michael Kidd was going to do the dances. George S. Kaufman was going to do the sketches, direct the sketches. I'm getting $150 a week at $125, I think, for the 54th Street Review. But it was television. Oof, I wanted to go back to Broadway. And they said, well, it's a summer tryout in a summer theater. I said, I don't care. And they said, it's only $75 a week. I said, I don't care. And I went to the head of the CBS, and I said, you've got to get me out of the show. I'll pay you money to get out. I've got to get back to Broadway. That's how we thought about television in those days. Little did we know. And I got into a show called Alive and Kicking. And that's, Pretty Penny went to Westport Theater in the Bucks County. It didn't work. Lenore Lonergan, Davy Burns, wonderful, George Keane, a wonderful cast, just didn't work. And I would say, gee, with all those powerful guys, how come it didn't work? Material wasn't quite good enough. From that, Max Liebman saw me do that and offered me a job in a musical. No, excuse me, you're jumping ahead. I auditioned for another job, which was a thing called Alive and Kicking. That was another musical done on Broadway. 6 weeks out of town, 6 weeks on Broadway. And you ever hear of it? Well,
only in my research by you.
Very few people heard of it. Anyway, but what was good about that is Max Liebman, who was doing a show called the Admiral Broadway Review, was about to do the show of shows. He came in to be a sketch doctor. One of the sketches was thrown out. They needed a new sketch, and he came with a sketch that we threw out too. That didn't work, but what did work is he, would you like to come and play with us, since he's a straight man? In 1950, I left Broadway to return only twice, once to direct a play in 1967. That was a lot of years later, something different that I did. And that was probably the most exciting thing I ever did on Broadway, even more than performing, because it was words I had written and hearing laughter coming from the stage and directing it. Hardest job I ever did. And then a few years later, I read a script by a young writer who was an advertising writer, sent it to me because he loved the Dick Van Dyke Show. Sent it in California. I read it and I laughed out loud. And I said, I don't want to go back to Broadway and direct a show, but I want to get this on. and it was a show called Tough to Get Help. It lasted 1 hour. I mean, one performance over, and it died. It was terribly funny. It was funny. Of course, Steve Gordon is the guy who wrote Arthur. Very soon after that, he wrote Arthur. He was a brilliantly comic writer. It just didn't work. So that was my Broadway experience. Those 5 things: 3 Broadway shows, 2 Broadway, one I wrote and directed, and one I just directed, and that was about it for Broadway. Except I go back every year and see the plays. That's what I do.
If you could go to any time in history, let's say any time in the last century, to Broadway, and see any show.
You know what I would like to see? If I can go back to any time in history, maybe this is because I just heard about it. I was listening to NPR radio, and it was Dorothy Fields. There was an old interview she had done, talking about the theater that existed. I can't remember, the Princess Theater. It was a little theater, I think on 42nd Street, not the New Amsterdam roof, but Mayfair. I can't remember the name, but they were little gems, musical gems, written by Hart and a few other writers, and P.G. Wodehouse, and Fields was a young writer at the time, a young lyricist, and she said you couldn't get into those theaters. They were like a 300-seat theater. Broadway waited for these little gems. They were sophisticated, urbane, witty. The lyrics it was sparkling, and they said you couldn't get a seat. The biggest stars fought for seats, she said, and luckily she knew she was related to people, and she used to go in there and watch these things, and she made me hungry to see. I said, gee, I wish somebody would find these shows they did that and recreate them. Somebody ought to get a hold of Dorothy Fields' interview on thing and find out the names of these shows and recreate them, because she told of a time that was absolutely magical, and maybe it's because it was past and we can't get to it that it's magical, but I would love to see those shows.
Oh yeah, especially that Intelligence,
Yeah.
which is played down now. What if you could go back to any time in history on Broadway and work in a show opposite anyone you wanted?
You know something? It's hard to fantasize about going back into any time and being there, because there are too many imponderables.
Is there anything you wish you'd done that you didn't get a chance to do?
There's nothing there is something I wish I had not done, because I can't do it. I loved opera. I loved when I heard the great singers on the Broadway stage who were close to being operatic. Those are the ones I gravitated to, and I said, oh, I love him. The John Race, the Howard Keels, even the Don, what's his name? The original. What was his name? Oh God!
What's the show?
My God, he was the toast of Broadway and a very good actor.
Mario Alonso.
Huh?
Mario Alonso.
No,
he was movies. I'll give it to you in 1 minute. It was.
The toast?
He did.
Not John Race.
Not
Howard Keel.
No. He was the first. He was before those guys, and wonderful.
Not Stephen Lang.
No. Cut tape. No, it's all right.
Well, now you know you're going to keep me.
No. I'm going to get it. We do not leave here. He sang with Doretta Morrow in the Borodin thing.
So he was more classically oriented.
Yeah, but he became a very good actor too. Later on, he acted without singing, and he was very good. When I give you the name,
Not Ezio Pinza.
No. He was an American, a short, handsome guy. I was going to say Don Riches, but he was in Finian's. Oh my God! I'm not leaving here. Stop it for a second. I'm not going to leave here till I get it, because I haven't said his name. I'm going to Robert Merrill, because he looked a little like Robert Merrill. Alfred Drake. You didn't even hear of him. You never heard of Alfred Drake. Good-looking guy, and what a wonderful performer.
Kiss Me Kate.
Kiss Me Kate. He was the original Kiss Me Kate.
Kismet.
Well, Kismet, yeah, the Borodin. We did that with Doretta Morrow, who I adored.
He told Patricia Morrison they did a play together in 1936.
Yes.
A musical. I forget what it was called, and Hollywood came knocking, and he said, "Don't go. They won't know what to do with you." And she said, but you know, Hollywood, they wanted to make me the fire and ice girl. They wanted to call me Patricia LaMorrison.
Oh, God.
She said, so I went. She said,
Oh, that was Kiss Me Kate.
no, because 10 years later she came back.
Because he wasn't Kiss Me Kate with her. She
Exactly. 10 years later,
She came back.
She came back in Hollywood. She auditioned for Cole Porter.
Oh.
And everyone said, don't put a film actress into Kiss Me Kate.
Oh.
But she said, no, she started on Broadway. And she came back and offered Drake said, I told you.
Yeah. No, so what did they do together beside that? That's interesting. I remember Patricia Morrison with those wonderful eyes.
Oh my gosh, she's as beautiful now as ever.
No
She
kidding.
lives in La Brea, Park La Brea.
In town.
Yeah. She
Oh.
jogged every day until last year. She was hit by a car.
Oh.
Now she walks every day.
Oh, God.
85. It looks just the same.
She can't look the same. Nobody looks the same at 85.
She looks like Loretta Young looked, kind of.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Loretta
Loretta I saw in the last years of her life. She looked sensational.
She doesn't have that surgery.
Yeah.
She has wrinkles, but she's
Yeah.
beautiful. I'll show you before you walk out the door, if you still have time, a clip of her, because it's...
Oh, I'd love to see it.
It's right here.
I'd love to see it. I'd give anything.
Absolutely, yeah, you'll see her last year.
Okay, give me.
Between stage and film, why was it so easy for you to grow up watching stage, be able to fill a 2,500 seat theater, and then go to television and instinctively bring it down so small? Like people like Lutton Fontanne, who are geniuses, and Catherine Cornell, they failed when they tried to bring it to the camera.
The transition from stage to television was a tough one for me when the first week or two, I was projecting. And today, I still get upset when I go to a theater and I don't hear people projecting, because now they're mic'd, and you'll hear serious plays where they're talking like this. Because a lot of movie actors who are used to be a good movie actor, you have to sound as real as possible. And you really sound real when you talk quietly. You don't sound real because people don't project when they talk to each other at a dinner table even. And so the first week in the show of shows, I remember somebody said, calm down a little, because I'm working for the lights. I'm catching the light from my eyes, you know. And it took a little doing, and it was sketches, so we still can be higher than real acting. But when I started doing pictures, I had to bring it down even more. But I never felt that I was not on a stage, because luckily for me, and that's probably what made me happy about television. In television, the show of shows, which was 9 years of my life, the show of shows, Caesar's Hours, Caesar Presents, were all in theaters. And they were done live. That was the big thing. So for 9 years, I didn't miss Broadway. I was on Broadway. We're at the International Theater, with the Al Jolson Theater, with 3 theaters. The Center Theater, which was torn down while we were in it, at the Rockefeller Center, and they put a building up above it, but it was a 10-year-old theater, the greatest theater ever made in New York. Eternal Road was there, The American Way, Reinhardt's Eternal Road, a theater that had a proscenium, you can't believe the size, 100 people would disappear in it. Tore it down, but we used to do the show of shows from there. 3,000-seat theater. We're working, they put a big screen behind us so people could see us, and we were so far away from, you know, in television you do a little look, you want to get a laugh. Sometimes in the stage you don't get those, you can't get you can't put a close-up where you want it on the stage. If you're this actor on the other side of the stage has done something funny, you put it closer. In the stage, the audience may be looking here, and it's, anyway.
So they had a big screen up at the theater there, like the way they do rock and roll concerts now?
That was the first screen put up, because it was when we went for the International Theater and people were missing laughs. The important thing was to hear laughs. And if you're doing subtle things for television, for the television camera, they didn't hear. But when they saw the screen, they were laughing at what we were laughing at home. So I never felt, and then from the show of shows, I went to the Dinah Shore show. I wrote and acted on that for a year. That was in front of a theater. That was already taped now. That was a little different. And we stopped and went. But right after that, I did the Dick Van Dyke Show, which was done 3-camera live. And the only time we stopped was to change clothes and change sets. So it was we do a half-hour television show in about 2.5 hours, but not by doing it over and over again in pieces. It was all done in one piece, like a play. So I felt I was in show business, in theater, for all those 15 years I was doing television.
And you were working with theater people, like you worked with Neil Simon and people like
right.
that who went back and forth. Right?
No, Neil Simon, once he left television, he went to theater and became a big theater. Neil Simon started his days on the Gary Moore Show and a couple other shows, on the Show of Shows, and worked for Sid for a lot of years, and wrote his first play called One Shoe Off. and he offered it to me to be in it. It became Can Blow Your Horn. And at that time, I had been in television for quite a few years, and I said, gee, I don't know if I could do the same jokes over and over again for 6 months or a year at a time. Here we can do new things, it's exciting. And I really didn't want to get back to Broadway because of the excitement of the things I was doing on the shows at the time. And then Neil Simon became the quintessential comedy writer of our century, Broadway comedy writer, but he was on the television. And once he got back into, once he got into theater, he never left it.
And you two completely flip-flopped.
Yeah, I flip-flopped. I did get back to the theater once in 1967 by writing and directing a show called Something Different, which was one of the most exciting parts of my life. To this day, when people say, where do you look to for the most, that was one of them. It was a failure. It ran 100 performances, as much as the original Hamlet by John Barrymore, I used to say to myself.
That's the great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a failure.
Yeah.
That's in a
Now,
lifetime.
everybody has a reason why things fail. I remember George S. Kaufman or somebody said, oh, the show didn't do well, it failed. He says, well, it's dark at night and people don't want to go out in the dark. I mean, that was an excuse why I didn't come to the theater. But everybody has it. My excuse was it opened, it was a big hit in Boston, tremendous. We got people were roaring, laughing, and we came to New York, and the Times Review, as it is today, is the review. And we got a new reviewer. Walter Kerr had been the daily reviewer, and he went on to the Sunday Times to do the Sunday review, the Sunday supplement, the arts and leisure section. And Clive Barnes, who had been a music critic, came. It was his first review that week, and he didn't understand it. It was really a very American, Jewish kind of thing about an author who wrote one great show, lost his muse, and to recreate it, he recreated his life back then when he was in his old kitchen in his beautiful home in New Rochelle. He brought his old kitchen, he cast a mother to play his mother. It was an absurd comedy. I did an absurd comedy. And he didn't understand it, and it didn't work. And people, if you don't get that first review, you're dead. And I'm glad to get the opportunity to tell people what happened to my Broadway career, because had that show been a success, I might have written another one. But Walter Kerr, 3 weeks after it had opened, he went to see it, and he wrote a review on Sunday, says, funniest thing he's ever seen. I mean, he mentioned Bruce J. Friedman's Scuba Dooba that year. He's don't miss these things. And the other thing that the other day, Sidney Sheldon at dinner said, I saw you play. Only a few people saw it, 100 performances. He said, I went with Groucho Marx. And I said, you can tell me if this is true, because it was reported to me. It was in Variety, and my friends told me about it. Had been running about it a couple months then. And at the curtain call, they got big curtain call, somebody stood up and started stopping the audience from applauding. And Gabe Dell, who was on stage, thought it was a crazy old man, because it was Groucho without his mustache, looking like an old man. And he was about to jump off the stage and grab the guy, because he was saying, stop applauding. And he made a speech. He said, are you aware that you've seen the funniest play that's ever been seen on the stage? He said, go tell your friends. He made a speech about that. So those are my memories of Broadway, and I want to keep that memory, because the memory after that is a play that lasted one. Oh, wait a second. There's a third memory that I didn't remember. Gary Marshall and Jerry Belson wrote a show called The Roast. It was a dramatization of comedians at a roast with an interrelated backstory, and my son played the lead in it. And that was a wonderful thing, because my memory of that is that it was a very hard thing to put on, because it was a little fouler language than you would ordinarily see on Broadway. And it was at the Winter Garden Theater, this palace of a theater. And I'll never forget it. It opened, and the big theater in front where Cats played I think Cats came in very soon after that. They started to paint the sign. It said the, and it closed while the sign was being painted. It closed in one day, so they never found R.O.A. what was going to be up there.
Oh, so the roast only ran one day, too?
One day, too. I had 2 shows that ran one day.
Oh, my God. Michael, could you hand me another tape? Do you mind if I change tapes and just do 5 more minutes with you?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Am I going to make you late?
No, I'm all right.
You sure?
Oh, no, okay. I'm okay.
Okay, it's just 5 minutes, but I think you
Okay.
could do something for me that no one else has really been able.
Wonderful actor. He's, you know, what is he now? What's the name of his show? He had a show, Miami Vice, and I think he's doing another one now. But you know,
Something in Turner and Hooch or something.
no, 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 no.
It's a,
No, it's
with the
He started
Cheech
in
and
theater.
Chong guy.
huh?
He was with Saw Minio. Don Johnson did a show on off Broadway or,
Yeah, Don
Yeah.
Johnson did a lot of off-Broadway. It was a lot of good actors who were working, and you can tell they can step on a stage, and you'll know that right away that they've been on the stage before.
Well, how would you explain to somebody, you know, one of your grandkids or something, who loves TV and goes to the movies, but sees no reason to go see a Broadway show? Say they're going to New York. How would you explain to them what happens in that theater that is different when it's good? It's different than.
Oh, it's very easy to get young people to go, parents have an appreciation for theater. Very simple. To get your children interested, you take them. You say, and they're shocked and surprised at the lights, the sound of the orchestra is different. And they see live actors. That live actors, they don't, everything they're seeing on television, you know, it's two-dimensional. Even if they're holograms, you can't touch them. In this, you can actually go backstage if you know them and shake their hand. It's a big thing. It's a very big thing. And I don't think there's ever any kid that's been taken to a Broadway show at the right time in his life that didn't come out saying, oh my, my kids were, I remember, well, the television had existed already. Yes, of course, it existed when I took my two children to see Peter Pan. And my kids, my daughter, who was about 4 or 5 at the time, had never seen a stage play before. Any kid of 4 or 5, you take them to a stage play, they're going to react positively, and they're going to be sitting quietly in the dark for an hour, 2 hours, and they're going to sit there. And television, they can go and play. They can get glued to the set when something good. But I was remembering my daughter, never having seen a play before. She saw Peter Pan at the end of the first act. She started to bawl, crying, couldn't stop her. I said, what is it, Annie, what is it? She thought it was over. She thought it was over and she wasn't going to see anymore. And when I told her there's a second act, she brightened up, and we went out and came back and there was a second act, and she saw more of it. On the way home in a cab, she cried all the way home because there was no more. So that's, and it had nothing to do with television or getting them away from television. Seeing something good on Broadway can touch people and continues to touch people. How about the fact that my friends Mel Brooks and Annie Bancroft came back from London yesterday? I spoke to her 2 days ago. They saw something in London. They said, you can't believe this. These two people on a stage with, I don't know the name of it.
I do. The two Irish guys talking about the film that's being made, and they play every character.
Yes.
Not Raining Stones, but something Stones in My Pocket.
Yes. Even today, people can get that excited about people on the stage. Two Irish guys in London playing Stones in My Pocket, about putting on a movie and doing all the parts. They came back like two kids and said, you got to see this. I said, I'll go to London. And they said, no, it's going to come to New York with those guys. So theater still can get people excited. Look what happened with The Lion King. You couldn't get in to see it because something new and bright and funny, and not funny, brilliant happened.
What do you think about your friend Mel Brooks? I have no idea how old he is, 75, 80 years old?
No, he's younger than I. I'm 78 and he's about 76, 75.
So 75?
73, no, he's 73.
73, being excited by what's happening in the theater and taking one of his films and writing a role.
Well, Mel is so excited he can't breathe because he did a couple things on theater. He did Archie and Mehitable, and he did All American. He wrote the book for All American, and he wrote a sketch for the Stillman Review of New Faces. He is now as excited as I've ever seen him in his life because he's written music and lyrics for a version of The Producers, and it's going to be wonderful. He sang me the songs, and he can't play the piano. He can't do, but he has a very good ear. He was a drummer, so he has very good rhythm, and the songs are hilarious. And he's rewritten it with Thomas Meehan, who did Annie. They've rewritten the Producers to make it palatable for to make it fit into a whole musical. He's got 12, 15, 10 songs. I don't know how many. And it's going to be wonderful. And he's hoping to do it this coming season or the season to come. And he's got 2 actors already.
Oh, really? Who's he?
Yeah, but I wouldn't announce it here. I'll tell you.
We'll say it after. But speaking of the next season, where do you think Broadway's going next? The new century, new millennium, new everything?
Every time somebody says Broadway is on its last legs, it's dying, something happens. Something brand new happens, or something revived, made to look new happens, and it gets people to Broadway. There are no problems on Broadway filling theaters. The problem is getting theaters. There are enough plays ready to go. There's off-Broadway too, and there's way off-Broadway. Broadway will always be there. Stages are easier to put up than television shows. You can get a stage in a community theater. You can get it in a church. You can always have people putting on. In this town now we have a thing called Reprise. They're reprising all of the old great shows, and I saw 4 or 5 of them. Thrilled to hear them again. And these are done minimally, you know, with a little bit of costuming and a little bit of staging, but mainly it's a concert.
Well, you know, Amanda Plummer was here doing her interview last night, and she said she thinks Broadway's going to, she said all you need is 8 inches off the floor, and it can be in people's apartments, it can be in lobbies. She said you can't.
She's absolutely right. People are now doing that. They're doing their own little, those performance art theaters where people take their apartment and invite you up to do their show. A woman did that 2 years ago. I was dying to see what that was.